Hi, welcome to this first in a series of interviews for the Department of Psychology here at the University of Chichester. And I'm delighted today to welcome my friend Helen Behan from Laytown in Meath in Ireland. And Helen is an actress and a nurse, and among her many roles. And today we're just going to discuss some of the psychology aspects of acting and her experiences in that. So you're very welcome, Helen.
Thank you very much, Ian. It's a pleasure as always to talk to you.
That's great. First of all, Helen, could you just give us an insight into how you came into acting?
So my entry into this profession was very unorthodox, and I was quite late-ish into my life. I wasn't a teenager, and so I was full of kind of trepidation. But I, at the ripe young age of 30, met by accident director extraordinaire Shane Meadows in a pub in Bettystown. I didn't know it was him. As you do, they wander in there all the time, and I was down there drinking tea.
Yeah.
But we happened to be down there, and he came in, and long story short, and it is a long story, and I can make it very long, dragging all the teasing all the crack out of it. But he was at the bar, and I didn't actually recognise. I knew of his work, but didn't know him. And my friend has pointed him out to me. So I thought, I mean, I'd always wanted to be an actress. I was a nurse because there was no acting schools kind of locally here when we were growing up, and there was no outlet for my showy offiness. So I went into nursing, and when I met Shane, I thought this is an opportunity. So I Dutch courage on board, went up to the bar and just got talking to him. And as the night wore on, I thought, this is an opportunity. Directors don't just wander in here. I have to ask. It was brazenness and boldness and drunkenness. But I thought the worst he can say is no. I mean, I've only just made a fool of myself and nobody else. So I asked him, and we had been having a laugh, and he was a very responsive person. I mean, that was half the battle. I think that he's the nice guy that he is. But he took my number, and he kind of carefully folded, and I thought maybe that meant something, you know, that he was, you know, watching me, because I would have kind of, if I was fobbing somebody off, would have scrunched it up and I'll call you, and throw it away. But he took care of it. And every time the phone rang after that night with a number from the UK, I leapt out of my skin, and it was only ever cold callers or God knows what. So eventually, a month or so later, he rang and asked me to come over for an audition. And I thought, what have I done? I've asked for this opportunity. He's handing it to me, and I was just violently ill with nerves, really just stressed out, thinking, oh, what am I going to do? I'm too old for this. I'm going to make a show of myself. That, you know, I'll be laughed out of it. It'll be a waste of their time. I talked myself down, and fair play to the people around me, said, cop on, book yourself up. You're well able. You had the balls to ask in the first place. Go over, and what's the worst that can happen? I can ruin my life. But I went over, I did an audition, and got in. And it started there when I was, you know, 30 and halfway through another career as a nurse. So it's been a mental roller coaster.
Yeah. So did you think it was a prank call when you received it first?
I kind of, my brother Danny's always doing stuff like that to me, and I do stuff like that to him. He rang me once to tell me he was after passing his driving test, and he was on his way home, and I rang him 10 minutes later and I put on a funny voice, and I said, this is Mary calling from the driving test centre, and I'm sorry, we got your paperwork wrong and you didn't pass your test. I kept it going, and I could hear the life going out of his voice, because he was after being such. So he's gotten me back on plenty of occasions. So I thought that this time maybe he's winding me up, but she sounded too official, the girl that works for him, and I knew then. So I was kind of jumping up and down, and then coming back to the phone, yes, that sounds lovely, and then screaming, and then that was it. I went over and did my audition, but I was pinching myself the whole time. I think it took me probably a year or two to realize what was happening, and it had come and gone at that point, you know.
Yeah, it's almost like you're describing Narnia, the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. We have McDonald's pub. You just walk in there, you just open a door to this completely new world.
Anything can happen in there. Anything can happen. I mean, it's, you know, 15-year-old me would have done that without thinking. I was always kind of a show off at school and center of attention, and not for any other reason than I loved, you know, doing and being. And and as the years go on, certainly with me, I lost confidence, and I'm older now, I don't know if I can do that, and what if all these doubts start to creep in. That was the most difficult thing, believing that I'd be able to do it. And even when he said, Jesus, that's great, I'd laugh and say, cop on.
Yeah.
You can't be talking about me, because it seems unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I think that somebody would want to, pay you to do something that you absolutely love to do. I mean, that's it, isn't it, really? You do what you love and you never work a day in your life. But
Yeah.
and he gave me an opportunity.
If you do love it, you work hard. There's another alternative. If you love something, you do work very hard at it.
I do work very hard at it. I mean, that's the other thing, I don't, I really value the opportunity. And I think that there's people who had the opportunity to go in at an early age, or was in a drama club and is still working at it to try and get half the place that I've been. You know what I mean? I think a lot of it's been luck, and a lot of it's been hard work, but I do realize what an opportunity is, and I will not waste it for one to try and, you know.
Excellent. So it sounds like you met the perfect director in Shane. So, like, for those who mightn't be familiar, so Shane directed Dead Man's Shoes and This Is England, and then so this is where you came into This Is England, which was already cult level fame. So it wasn't a small project to come into. It was something that had already huge status.
I mean, I had been watching it, trying to re-familiarize myself with the characters and the stories before going over for that audition. And then, the next day I was over there and we were all having lunch together, and I just thought, oh, Jesus, I was looking at all you guys on the telly yesterday. This is bananas. And then Shane said, have something to eat. And I said, oh yeah, I'll have a bowl of soup. I had one spoon out of it and then went into the bathroom. I like I'm out of my depth here. So it was really quite physically quite nerve-wracking. Like I physically, it all manifested itself physically, all that stress. I was very sick. I mean, I sat on it, because I thought, don't balls this up. This is a big opportunity. But it really had a very physical impact on me. The nervousness, sweating. I mean, I remember I did a play in Dublin, a two-hander with this actress called Denise McCormick, and it was about sex workers, and it was about this girl who had manifested this other person. Mary Claire it was called, and this other persona that she'd manifested was the one that dealt with the sex work, and the other one was the parent, the mother. So she had made herself two people in order to psychologically be able to cope with that. And I mean, I remember getting ready for that and prepping for that, and really all day just, I mean, when you're blocking something and you're memorizing your lines, you know that when you go to the table, you should be saying this. And when you're at the door, you should be saying this. So you map it out and it becomes this puzzle that you can put together. And, you light cues and music cues where you're supposed to be. But all day coming up to the run, it's a very different beast, live theatre. It's very, very nerve-wracking. If you balls up on TV, cut, we can go again. Whereas I'm standing there and all the dudes I went to college with are sitting in the front row, poking one another. You have to kind of look through them and pretend they're not there. But the nervousness coming up to that was quite something. And then I'd get on stage and 2 seconds into lights up, I'm somewhere else and I'm in it and I'm doing it. And then after the run was over of 2 or 3 weeks or whatever it was, my body was physically in knots and pieces from the tension of holding the stress and worry of it. But a good bottle of wine and a massage sorted me out. But that was all a learning curve, how to deal with that, how to deal with the physicality of theatre, and how to deal with the intensity of other people relying on you to deliver something. And it wasn't, I mean, Shane was a friend and he really took care of me and took time. But on other projects, they're on a budget and they're on a timeline and you have to deliver and you've got 2 goes and that's it. And that brings its own pressure, So that's been a learning curve. I'm meandering off your questions, Ian.
No, that's great. No,
I did warn you.
No, it's excellent. So, did you still have that tension now? Do you think that's an essential part of being an actor and actress, is to have that kind of pent up tension beforehand, and that motivates you to actually learn your lines, I suppose, and get more into character and identify with them more?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not as pent up as I was. I've learned to kind of, like anything really, practice, and I've learned to kind of deal with those and do the things that calm me before going to work. Honestly, I feel so lucky every time I get a job that I want to deliver and I want to bring honesty to the character. And I'm one of these actors that can't fake it. If I'm supposed to laugh and it's not funny, I won't laugh.
Yeah.
You won't get it to me. I mean, I was talking to Vicky McClure, I've said this before. I was doing an audition for an ad. And I said to her, I have to laugh in it, you know. And she said, oh, just do this. Oh, and she just threw her head back and she started roaring laughing. And I said, I can't, I don't know. I don't have that skill. I don't know how to do that. I like the grit and the things that I can relate to.
Yeah.
But I mean, I want to be able to do that, and I'll develop that skill. But I think the more I care about the character, the more I invest, but I care about all of it. I still can't believe I do this for a job. And so I invest. My husband will tell you that 100% in it. Like, it's easier to be away on a job because I can give it 100%. It's very difficult to stay in character and come home at the end of a day and make a dinner or help out with homework, or, you know, it's hard to live in that headspace, you know, the character. And I just recently did a television series where I played a very colourful character. Not entirely unlike me, but part were definitely unlike me. And so to get into that headspace and carry that around, it was like that play I was talking about earlier. I used to come out of the Teachers Club we filmed in Dublin.
Yeah.
And because of the content and because of how fully immersed I was in it, it made me very, in that time, it changed my I don't know, I don't know if you ever listened to Blind Boy.
Yeah.
He talks about flow and being in flow, and it's something that maybe artists have. I don't consider myself an artist. I don't like, I feel like an artist is somebody that creates, and I'm having this debate with my husband. He's saying if you're creating a character, you are an artist. Yeah. I find it difficult to put myself in that box. I think he is, because he's a musician, and I see him write something wonderful and create something wonderful. But that flow that Blind Boy talks about, I certainly feel that when I'm working, and it not all the time, but at certain times, and then there's nothing else, and it's like that's all that's real. And certainly that was the case with the theatre, because you have to feel it. You can't turn it on and off. You have to be on for the entire performance. It's not like screen work. So when I came out of the Teachers Club at night, I had that, you know, the darker element of sex worker feelings and the psychology of that, and the darkness of the streets, and it just lived over me. That sounds kind of weird probably to say, but just lived over me like a cloud for the week. And going home to small kids and feeling like that is not a nice feeling. It's like, so when, depending on the job, I think I like to be isolated from the joy in my life. If I have to play a character like that, I need to stay in the dark. Do you know what I mean? It's difficult to convincingly flip-flop. I can't be neither a good mother nor a good actress if I'm a bit of both. So it's nice to be gone for that and fully give the work 100%, and then come back and decompress and be the other person, you know. It's probably not good for my mental.
No, and so when you're in that world, like, so are you actually dreaming as the character? So when you're lying asleep at night, are you almost still the character when you're asleep, or do you go back to being Helen when you're at night?
I'm Helen when I'm at home, but she's there all the time, this other character, when I'm that immersed, and I think about it all the time, because I mean, that's what I'm learning to do, is to think like that person thinks. That's the only way to inhabit them convincingly, I think. So, but I don't. I do dream about parts at times, but it doesn't consume me that much that I can't go home and shake it off a bit. But if it's a run like theatre, or if it's a shoot for a few weeks, I like to stay in it. Not to the point where I am me at home, but I keep the character with me as much as I can to stay on, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. So it's really interesting. So, and there you are now. So you're now a BAFTA nominee. So how did that feel? So we just talk about some of the roles as well that you've been in since then. So you've been in This Is England 1988, This Is England 1990,
Yeah.
which is a major role, and you were Evelyn, the nurse
Yes.
in that. So, and you're Lol's friend, and so your part became bigger and bigger
Yeah.
in 1990. So, and and then that led on to the Virtues was huge, wasn't it? This time,
Yes.
well, about last year
He
with
wrote
Shane again.
he wrote that part for me, and that character, I mean, the amount of feedback I've had from people that have watched it that said, I know her, I know
Yeah.
that character, she's my sister, she's my mother, so to be able to reach people on that level, I think that's really what I want to do. I like to look at a character on screen and say, that's me. And this project, The Virtues, was so personal to Shane. It was an experience that he had, and he said, if I don't manifest this inner turmoil that I have artistically, I'll end up doing something, that's not good. So it was therapeutic for him and cathartic for him to do it, and we all kind of became embroiled in that journey. And he works in a very specific way, and I mean, rehearsals are like group therapy, and you find that you're all pouring your shit into the rehearsal room. And so when you're acting, and when he operates in such a way that he talks you through your stuff. I mean, he's an amazing person to be around. You find yourself opening up and letting all your stuff out, which you didn't think you were going to do that morning when you get up and have your coffee. You end up going in and telling your deepest, darkest things about yourself and crying your eyes out. And then he makes you use them, and that's what makes these characters so real, is that they're relatable. People see something of themselves or something that's happened to them or somebody they know. And that kind of work is very important to me. And Stephen Graham, who plays Joseph in it, we've talked about it so much that people stop us on the street to talk about it and to say that they went into recovery after seeing it, or they spoke about their own abuse stories after seeing it. That's important work, and the BAFTA is lovely. That's all amazing. I can't believe that one of my first big jobs out of the gate brings a BAFTA nomination. It's completely surreal. So I talk about it and smile about it as talking about somebody else, because it feels completely surreal. But they're the kind of jobs I want to do. And if what you make puts its arms around people, that's important stuff. I think people sometimes think that this is a flighty job and it's all glitz and glamour, and that job was bloody hard work, and it was it hurt me physically to do it, hurt me emotionally to do it, and I was 100% invested in it, and I got my own catharsis out of it. And so it's if somebody somewhere, it's like the nursing thing in me, it's helping. If you know what I mean, not that all jobs I'm going to do are going to be that, but the fact that spoke to somebody and that they felt less alone in their own lives for whatever reason, then that's enough award and enough reward,
it was amazing. Like, I felt like, I think the way you described it is really well, going through Shane's own personal experience, because it really felt like that. It felt like, from a psychologist's point of view, that was like a run of therapy over a period of few weeks, because I think by the second episode was really claustrophobic, and it was building up, the tension was really, and then it needed a kind of release in episode 3, which kind of came, and then they did, and the end point with the twist in the end was excellent. And that's kind of like what a lot of clients in therapy get right at the end. It's like they don't maybe need the full like revenge against maybe the person who might have hurt them or traumatized them, but it's to get in a point of acceptance and can walk away in the way that Stephen Graham's character did. But some of the scenes like that scene in the hospital with you and Stephen was incredible. So is that something that, how do you come down after an incredibly intense scene like that? Do you just, when the shoot's done, or do you just walk away, or do you really have to almost debrief, or just give each other a huge hug at the end of it? Because there's a huge emotion in that.
We do all of that. There's huge emotion in it, and I think when you've laid down a scene like that, afterwards that it's something special, and you talk it out that day and you talk through it, and then when you see it again played back and it gets the response it gets, it's lovely. But I think ultimately ultimately, if I start making things for other people, there's danger in that. I have to do it for myself. It's quite selfish, but I really think that the praise is lovely, and I'm in real danger at the beginning of letting my head blow up, and because there was an awful lot of good feeling afterwards, and you open your phone and it crashes because there's so many messages coming in. That's a lot to this sounds like a really spoiled prick thing to say. There was so much good vibe coming from people. This was totally bananas to me, and so I was going around like with a big huge head floating and I thought, this isn't, but it was through listening to Blind Boy, and I go into therapy myself and all those kind of things, that I realized it's not too good to pay too much attention to that. It's lovely, thank you very much, but if that can make me feel really good, then maybe the bad stuff would make me feel really terrible. So I'm trying not to overanalyze it too much, not to let that stuff in. We talk about it afterwards. Sometimes we have a wrap party, not this year at all. There's been we had a virtual toast of champagne on Zoom, which was lovely. And I like that because I'm at the stage now where I like to duck off home early anyway. So the fact sitting in my PJs with my champagne in my own home was quite comfortable. But it's hard to shake it off, and depending on the character or the part you've played, it can be more difficult for some than others. Like Stephen really put himself through the ringer for that character, and he goes all into physically, mentally, emotionally, not in a methody way, but just very invested and wanting to do well. And particularly with Shane, and particularly with that story, everybody wanted to do it justice. So there was a real labor of love, that project. And they're not all like that. I mean, you try and give yourself. I mean, Elizabeth is Missing, which I did with Glenda Jackson, our dementia story. That was a fabulous job, and I didn't know what my role would be in the beginning. I thought, this is an Oscar winner, and this isn't. They've made a mistake, This, all the time I'm at that, but we got in and worked together, and you learn as you go. I mean, everybody's part of the story. Everybody's a cog in the wheel, but I didn't know how dwarfed I'd be by her brilliance, but I just, it was important to show the family's element, the family side of living with somebody with dementia. And so while I was in awe of Glenda, I had a job to do, and I was, that was a very kind of, it was different for me in that I wasn't working for somebody who had become my friend. I was now employed as an actor. I had been employed as an actor before, but it didn't sit in with me quite as much. So that was a real learning curve. And you can't either, I mean, you can't live in this, I don't want to be one of them, I need to be in character, don't disturb me, I'll be in my none of that. There's certain times where I need to be by myself and listen to music. I don't want to be a diva. I mean, I've met them people and you don't need to be a prick to be an actor. You can be a nice person. And so that's important to me, to get on well with people. And if I need time, because, and if they'll allow me it, to go to a certain place emotionally, I'll take that, before a scene. And then I do hold on to it, and I do think about it, and people talk to you about it for a long time afterwards. So it's hard to shake it off. And sometimes for certain roles, you're associated with it forever, so you never fully lose any of these people. But certain jobs are harder than others to shake, whether it be for the content or for the immersion of yourself in it or whatever it is. But I try, once I'm home, to get rid.
And your husband can help as well. Get him into some singing songs.
Well, I'll tell you, he helps me by telling me, don't be going getting notions now.
It's a classic Irish word, is notions.
Absolutely. Don't be going getting any notions about yourself. But also, I think the fact that I'm a nurse, Ian, I've done a 13-hour shift in a hospital. I've worked in an oncology ward. I've worked goddamn hard for no money, as all nurses do. And so I've seen that side of life, and then I see this, what I consider a privileged position, to work in a job I love, being creative and being paid for it, where somebody, and people make you cups of tea, and they, you know, they mind you when you're an actor, and it's lovely. But I think I'm glad that I was 30, and I'm glad that I was already a nurse, so that I had all this knowledge of, you know, to not be an arsehole, try not to be an arsehole, and accept that this is a lovely, wonderful, privileged thing to do, to be able to tell a story that may or may not reach somebody, and that it is important work, and take it seriously, and be professional, and you know, take the work seriously, and don't take yourself too seriously, and don't kind of try not to let it all go to your head, which is difficult.
It's like, especially when you're receiving them. That's incredibly well put, and it's kind of like George Bernard Shaw, and like taking the successes and failures and treating them both as imposters. Because like, if you take the successes too well, then the lows will be too low. And when they come on. But some of the comments are nice. I think I really like the lady on Twitter who said that after your performance in The Virtues, as Anna said, real heroes wear cardigans and drive Fiats. So it is that it's the people that identified with that, like it's the single mothers and everything who are really fighting against every day-to-day existence, and just seeing that kind of character, even though Anna obviously wasn't a single mother in the program, but they identified a lot with that, and so it's a sense, and just this is England was very, very real. That was incredibly raw as well. Like, even as just watching that ourselves, like, so remember the dinner scene was really intense. I felt I needed a shower after just watching, and I was only watching it. I can imagine what you guys like actually sitting around that dinner table.
It was very, very intense. And for 3 hours before that scene, we sat and talked. Like, no one else has that luxury. You never get that time on set. But it's so important to the way Shane works, because he gets everybody to an emotional point, and as you're talking, he's kind of wheeling the camera, you know, beckoning them in and getting them set up, because he knows you're ready. It's an instinctual thing, it's a visceral thing, and it's more on, you know, the script is there and it's very honest and truthful, but he wants it honestly out of your mouth. So if you need to change something or tweak something so it sounds more kind of believable from you, then he's quite happy for you to do that. And there's great freedom in that, and there's great you know, something great comes of it. It's great art that comes of truth. And I think people are, I don't know, I don't really like kind of neatly tied in a bow stories too much anymore. I think the reality is people have tough lives and they work hard, and sometimes they catch a break and sometimes they don't, and they're the stories I really
they are. They're incredibly real.
I like a bit of escapism too, but
and as you mentioned with Elizabeth is missing, and that was a stunning film, and I'm glad it's getting the recognition around the world that it deserves. And Glenda won an international Emmy recently, didn't she, for the role as Maud? And so, can you just explain a little bit about your character? So you were Helen yourself, so at least you didn't have to change your name,
which was handy. Which was handy. And she's a Northern English lass, and her mother has dementia, and it's a book, a film based on a book by Emma Healy called Elizabeth is Missing, and Maud is played by Glenda and Helen is played by me. And Maud has had an early childhood trauma whereby her sister vanishes, and she spends the entirety of her life looking for her missing sister, and it's only through her dementia that she solves the riddle, I suppose. And the frustrating thing for her is that everybody thinks she's losing her marbles, and it was my job, I suppose, to show compassion and the frustration, you know, in equal measure associated with living with somebody with dementia. And it was a lot of research done for that. I mean, I had nursed dementia patients, so I had seen a variety of that type of person, and I've had family members related who've had dementia, but I was never living with it. So that, to get into that mindset and to do that justice was difficult. And I read quite a few books. One in particular, I think it was called How Dementia Teaches Us to Love. And a lot of the time, what I learned from that film, which I had never learned nursing, was because it was told through Maud's inner monologue, you know, the great unreliable narrator that she was, she knows what she wants to say.
Yeah.
And inside her it makes sense, and what comes out is nonsensical. And I can only imagine the frustration of that, trying to articulate what you know to be right, and it's coming out in a jumble, and people are accepting that at face value and treating you, reacting to you in that way. So it was learning to, you know, find the compassion, I suppose, and the understanding to not, like my instinct, and I spoke to the director about it, you know, I said, if this was happening at home, I'd be losing the rag. And she said to me, you know, very cleverly and quite rightly, you don't have time to fall apart every day when you're looking after somebody with dementia, because they've got doctor's appointments or they've fallen again or something. You don't have time to cry and say, God, look at how this is affecting my life. So that was a real eye-opener. I thought, okay, well, if this happened to my mum, I'd be in bits. And she said, no, you don't have time for that. You have to, you know, and we had a long discussion about how when somebody is ill and falling apart, because you talk to people and say, God, they're going through something terrible. I don't know how I'd cope with that. When you're in it, you do cope because you have to. And so it was understanding that she was trying to say something, and that, and still to keep them safe. And so that was a really, and we got amazing feedback from that job. That I mean, it's an increasing issue, and Glenda has plenty to say on the subject. She certainly did at the time, and she was a Labour MP for 30 years. So
oh, she's amazing.
Really an exceptional woman, and she feels quite rightly that you know, our elderly population are forgotten about, and you know, Vicky did this program.
I saw that. Yeah, that
to me was fantastic. How they mightn't remember what they had to eat yesterday or who's sitting beside them, but they remember the lyrics to all their favorite songs, you know, the impact that music has. And that was really eye-opening.
And it's something that we do a fair bit of research on here at Chichester in the psychology department. Like, so we had a paper with one of our undergraduate students, Katie Appleton, and is supervised by Anthony Pereira. So they got a paper published in Dementia. They interviewed 21 professional carers of people with dementia, and the interviews are raw and powerful. I mean, actually delve into, and as I said, it's not the same as, say, as Helen was, in that it wasn't like their mother, but just experiences of day in, day out looking after these people because they come very close to them. And they said one of the hardest parts is actually seeing family members coming and then not being recognized. And so I thought that was really powerful in that bus stop scene with you and Glenda, with Helen and Maud. And when she doesn't recognize you, and then she turns around and recognizes you as so I thought both of you played that one really, really well.
Oh, I mean, it was important for me to get that one right. I remember feeling the weight of responsibility of that moment, and I was thinking about my own parents and thinking about what that must be like. I mean, and I had a friend whose mother had dementia, and she spent 2 years going into a nursing home to a stranger. You know, I just can't imagine what that's like. And to persist and to still go, because what that takes, you know, to sit there and be with someone who doesn't know who you are, that honestly, it's I think it's the most heartbreaking illness there is, for that very reason. And you begin to lose the person the minute they become unwell, slowly in bits, you know. It's a very difficult thing. And when you see the likes of the dementia choir, and the way, one story I uncovered at the time was about Glenda was telling me about this man around London who used to direct the traffic with a knife and fork. He'd be out whatever every day, and everybody that passed him thought he's mad in the head. He was dismissed by society completely. And of course he was losing his marbles. But when she had looked into who he was some famous conductor of an orchestra. And so in his dementia, he was out doing his great work, you know,
Yeah,
that he'd done all his life. But because he was doing it with a knife and fork in the street, you know, there's a lack of understanding about how unwell these people are, and that underneath they are people who had lives and who were conductors and doctors and, you know, composers, and this illness robs them of everything. You know, it's devastating.
It shows how fundamental memory is. Like, it's almost like as soon as we start to lose our memory, we lose our sense of self, whatever that sense of self actually is, and how critical it is. Yeah, I certainly remember that with my granddad before I go in to see him in his nursing home, and he'd look around and tell me why did I let the chickens out of the room, because he was thinking we're back in the garden. And so you just have to actually, it's almost like you'd have to roll. I go out and pretend to bring the chickens back in, even though we're in a kind of nursing home room.
And that's the thing to do.
Yeah.
Why not do that? You know, like I've worked in places where people have been told, stop that, that's silly, they're not here, and you know, and that's frustration, and I understand that too. But why not go and let the chickens out? You're making him feel better, you're making him feel like it's done, and then that moment passes and he's back in the room, or he isn't back in the room. But you know, it doesn't cost anything to let them feel safe and secure, and show them, okay, yes, we are. Yeah, there'll be another bus along in a minute. You've got somebody who keeps wanting to go home, you know, and they're at home. Well, that bus is gone or broken down. So and then that placates them, and there'll be another one tomorrow, so they don't feel ignored and they don't feel, you know, forgotten until the moment passes. And they do, you know, that's the life of that disease. You're in and out of different thought processes every you know, few minutes, but it's nice to be able to be like that and play along and give them that bit of security. I agree. So, but how
did that one feel with being 9 p.m. prime time BBC One? So it doesn't get much bigger than that. Like
it doesn't, and it came up in my timeline and my thingy this year, because it came out on the 8th of December last year. So it was, and I was just looking at all the stuff that came in about it. I mean, I still don't quite believe it all. You know, I say, I'm smiling, I did, but like, it's because I'm immersed in it, and then maybe it's a long time later till it comes out. You kind of, not that you forget about these things, you don't, and then they come back and all the hype is, and like, there's a film that I did there 3 years ago that just came out this year, and I had completely forgotten. You know, so much time had passed. It was lovely to see it, but primetime Sunday night, it's a dream, really is a dream. But I'm trying to be careful with my head and say, that's wonderful that you got to do that. Now work hard and keep going. And it's fantastic.
That's like and I know you mentioned before about kind of feeling like an imposter. So is that, do you think that's overdone? Like, there's almost like everybody's claiming to have an imposter syndrome in every job.
Yes, I think a lot of people are faking it. But I feel like less of an imposter now, but I absolutely did at the start. And certainly because of the way I came in, I feel like, oh God, people who've trained as actors are looking at me thinking, who does she think she is now? I really, that's an honest feeling for me. It's an honest feeling. And I think there's an awful lot of a feeling among actors, we're getting away with it, say nothing. Because it's madness. It's just such a fantastic job. And I think I look at people and I see them prepping in a certain way. And because I'm not trained in any way to do this job, I'm thinking, oh God, I should be doing this and I should be doing that, and I keep thinking I'm going to get found out. That's really a true feeling. Someone's going to say, no, you've had your fun, that's long enough now, out you get. It just seems too good to be true.
Like, I can hear that. I'm knocking on for you here as well.
It seems too good to be true. I'm going with it because, and it's a precarious industry. You know, let's call it at any moment the arse could fall out. So I just think it's happening now. I'm enjoying it now. I would be an avid believer in having a, you know, backup plan. If I'd gone into it at 18 or 19, it might be different. I honestly don't know how people with no other skill set manage. Because sometimes there's months between jobs.
Yeah.
And you go for audition after audition. I had 3 auditions this week. I had 2 tapes to send in and a Zoom one I did yesterday. I had 2 auditions last week. I mean, they're coming in thick and fast, which is wonderful. And some are landing and some are not.
Yeah.
And sometimes you go through long periods where none are landing. And if you're in any way vulnerable, you start to say to yourself, I'm no good at this. That's why I'm not getting any of these jobs. They were just flukes.
Yeah.
It's all over now. It's not, you know, it's not good for the vulnerable. It's not a good job. I can see why people, you know, end up, you know, supplementing their happiness with alcohol or with whatever their choice is. I can see how that can happen, because you can have these major things and these BAFTA nights, and you know, you're up here and everybody thinks it's wonderful, and then nobody knows you've been out of work for 6 months and you're broke on your arse, and you know, it's very extreme. And I think in the wrong hands it's going to be a very difficult profession, because I came into it a little bit later and I'm not as immature as I was 20 years. I feel like I appreciate that the work is there and that it may not always be there, and I work my ass off when I'm in it, and then when I'm not, I say, right, what can I be doing? Because if I have too much time without a job, I'll start to question why I'm not working. Am I any good? I'll start to let that voice in. So if I'm occupied and I'm working, nursing or working in a shop or doing whatever, if I'm doing something, I'm occupied and I'm not kind of letting the negative side of it in.
It's something similar to academia in that sense, and that it's that kind of similar schedule of reinforcement, and you've no idea when the next one is coming through. So like, for example, this year I've had quite a lot of papers accepted, lucky enough, but the previous year I got 5 rejections in a row over a period of months, and then you start to doubt yourself again. Is this for me? Am I any good at this? Like, it's almost like saying I've been found out. I've got 5 rejections in a row. But you go through those lows, and then the good periods come again. But it's similar to yours with auditions, is that you apply for these grants and you write these papers, submit them, but you've no idea if they're gonna land or not. And you have to. It is tough, especially when you get performance reviews and say, well, why haven't you published X amount? And so, well, I've submitted. Like the auditions, the same thing. I've submitted 20, but only one landed. Like same with your role. So, do you think that, or is there a period of time where you think that, like, would a year be too long, and you think, oh no, okay, I haven't got anything in a year, or have you got reinforced every few months with a new role type?
Yes, I've been lucky, but I think there has been long periods, like really long periods, and the reason it hasn't. The reason I haven't pulled the pin out of it and walked away is because something has come up and I've been working in the meantime. I think I've been doing something else in the meantime. I think if I was waiting for it all the time, it would be a different story probably. But this is the nature of the business I'm in, and I'm learning that, you know, the highs are really high, and there's nothing like it when you're in flow and you're working and you're doing what you love and you're creating and people are responding to it and all of that. And then there's long periods when it's not that. You know, it's mostly not that. And then you've got these, you know, intermittent gleeful periods where you're doing what you love and getting paid for it. And the rest of the time you're trying to get those jobs, learning lines, investing in materials, you know, spending your time to be knocked back after knockback after knockback. There is a lot of rejection. It's mostly rejection. It's like 80% no, and then 20% you get the job, and then it'll give you another job eventually. But it you know, of all the roles there are, they put it out to tender, and you know, there's taller actresses and skinnier actresses with smaller noses and bigger noses and less forehead, and you know, there's somebody different to me that's going to be just a little bit better. And every time I got a knockback initially, I cried my hand up like a child, you know.
But it is a rejection is tough to take no matter what age we're at. I think.
And I feel like I bloody did a good job there, and I really thought I was going to get it. And then I watched the program and saw who they gave it to, and she's not as good as me.
I like that.
I'm dealing
throwing
with
the popcorn at the TV.
I'm just turning it off, raging with it. But I think you have to, and this has come with age and cop on, and a stern word from my husband. You can't be whinging every time it does. Like, get out of this business if you're not able for that bit. You have to be able for the rejection.
Yeah.
It's not you. It takes mental practice, you know. I am trying my hardest. I did my best in there. And for whatever reason, she looks slightly different to me, or very different from me, or sounds different, or maybe I don't look like they imagined the character, whatever. I did all I could do. I did nothing wrong. They just didn't pick me, and that's it. And generally, whether this is something that you tell yourself to make yourself feel better, I didn't get that job because it's making way for this job, you know. And oftentimes I land on that job and I say, that's why, and I can, you know, vindicate myself. Sometimes it's a long time coming before the next job comes, but the power of no is another good thing. I mean, I kind of went through a period of feeling I have to take every job going, because why wouldn't I? But, you know, it's, you have to choose things carefully as time wears on. And I said no to my first job. One of the first jobs I said no to, and I agonized over it, and I thought, God, you know, they've offered me this and this. I was treating it really personally, and it's business. And they, like, I mean, the minute I said no, they moved on to somebody else. It didn't knock a spark out of them, but I was in angst over it. And then I said, God, I've turned that down, and that's a pay packet. And I don't know where my next one is coming from. What am I doing? And then something better came along that was, you know, more suitable for me, and I was glad I waited, and I felt slightly empowered by it. But you have to be in a kind of strong position to be at that stage. I'm not, you know, the job has to be right and all of that, but yeah, it's the no's are tough to take, and they continue to be tough to take. I did a very big audition there a couple of weeks ago, and I got a call back, and it was for a huge series, and it would have been monumental, and I met the execs on the Zoom and everything. This was big time baby Hollywood and all that, and it didn't go my way in the end. And I thought, I really, really, really thought I was going to get it. And I could taste it, and I put a lot of work into it. I put a lot of time into it. And when that happens, I ignore everything else. So the dishes slide, there's no laundry done. They're all suffering here because I'm fully invested in working towards getting this part, in the hopes that I'll get it and then I can relax. And so I put all this time and effort and energy into it, and you get the call back, and that's even greater excitement. And then it falls flat. And it's that rinse and repeat, you know. So it's getting the mental strength to deal with that. It takes a lot, and I've shed a few tears. I'm not going to say I didn't. I did cry over it, and then I dust myself off and say it wasn't mine.
It's really good.
Something else will be.
That's really, you've got a great philosophy, like a really wonderful understanding, and it's a great approach. And sounds like your husband's a great coaching psychologist as well. So with the mental toughness.
We're a good team. Yes. Behind every good woman, there's a man rolling.
That's right. Just with learning, because we do a lot of research on memory, and there's always the desperation to find the 5-minute trick that will increase your memory capacity. And so we're always amazed at actors and actresses that can recite long monologues, especially on stage. As you said, on stage you have to do it. It's a one shot. You don't have the luxury like you might have in a TV shoot. So is there any techniques, or do you use any memory palaces where you associate rooms in your house with certain scenes and words, or is it just rote learning and rote repetition?
The truth is, a lot of it's repetition, just good hard work and repetition. But what I do is I dictate my scenes onto my phone, and then I put them in my ears, so I carry on with my life. So because if I feel like, and I was the same studying for exams, if I felt like I had to sit at a book, the weight of it would be too much. I'd find an episode of Friends to watch or something else to distract myself. So this way of studying for me is much easier. I walk the dog, I put it in my ears, and then I just play it on repeat, and then I pause and test my memory. So I record my lines and my scene partner's lines, and then I stop it after theirs and see if I can remember mine, and play mine and run it through. I listen to it over and over and over when I'm washing up, when I'm doing this or that. And I don't know what it is. It doesn't take long. I don't know what the trick is. I could write the scene, the program out from start to finish, you know, after I've done the play or after I've done the show. It stays in there for a certain amount of time and then clear it out to make way for the next. But I suppose I think about the characters when I'm reading the lines, and I think about what they're doing when they're saying certain things, and then I play that image out in my head and the lines come, you know. Sometimes I write it out. Mostly I listen to it. I think when it's in my ear, it stays in my head. And I just, but like you often get an audition on a Monday night and they want it by Wednesday, and you've got a job or other things to do. So I might have a couple of hours to so I just have to go hard at it for a couple of hours. But it's listening to it. Listening to it is what works for me.
That's great. No, that's really, really good advice for all actors and actresses. That's really good. I'll probably keep this well. Could you give us some pointers as to upcoming films or TV shows that we might be able to see you in?
So I've done, I did a very interesting film there, a short stint on it with George McKay, who was in 1917, and it's Natalie Biancheri is our director. It's a weird art house film about these kids who have body they have a dysmorphia where they feel that they're an animal spirit as opposed to a human, and it's very bizarre.
Well, and, you had me at weird. Once you said the word weird, I'm in there. You know,
well, that's called Wolf, and I think that will be next year. And then I did another little stint on a film with Aidan Gillen. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say about that. That's the other thing of being an actor. You get great news and then you can't tell anyone.
You just can't give me a world exclusive now.
And then I just finished a television series for ITV Global, and that's about this upper class couple who have this lovely house and perfect life, and then there is a break-in to their house and the night ends catastrophically, and the story unfolds from there. So that was quite. It was a good drama one to do, and she was a very colourful character to play. So I enjoyed that. I'm about to film a short by this Oscar-winning production company and this young director, and it's called Susie, and it's about divorce. And basically the premise is that, you know, you've seen divorce in many different lights, but very rarely from the woman's point of view, where there was nothing wrong, there was no infidelity, there was the marriage just dissolves. And so it's to tell that story, and that's a story personal to this director, and they felt that I was the right person to tell that story. And so it'll just unfold over a day in the life of this woman, leading up to a pinnacle moment in something that happens to their family. So I'm looking forward to doing that, and that's filming in around Kent, I think.
Okay. You should call in for a visit.
I will.
You're very welcome.
I will. Thank you very much.
we aren't too far.
It's Jesus, Ian, I certainly will if I'm over that neck of the woods. They're waiting for there's a few issues with coronavirus holding that up, but that's happening. And then obviously there's a couple of things in the pipeline that I can't talk about.
It sounds you've been incredibly busy. That's an amazing body of work.
A BAFTA nomination will do that for you, you know, it'll bump up the old CV. But like I said, it's precarious. I'm taking it when it comes, and some are landing and some are not. And I have nursing, you know, to keep me sane, and it does keep me sane, and it keeps me on the even keel. So I'm continuing to do that.
That's brilliant. Anyway, thanks a million, Helen. I thoroughly enjoyed that. You're a wonderful interviewee, and you're just still the same girl as you were when you're 12 years of age. I'm just still chatting away to you as if, but it's wonderful for us. It's still wonderful for us. It's always a big event for us when you're on screen. We treat it like the cinema in the house. like I said,
Thank you so much. I'll tell you, it's been a real pleasure. I have to apologize. I told you this earlier on. I talk way too much.
No, it's perfect. No, no, you learned that you have a wonderful philosophy and a fantastic attitude in a very tough, very complex, competitive business with an awful lot of highs and lows and rejections going back. But I'm delighted how it's going, and your outlook and your philosophy is something that a lot of actors and actresses and psychologists can learn from. So,
thank you so much. See me now when I lose out in my Oscar and I'm all over the front pages after smashing the place up.
It'll be just in character. You say it was only in character. It was only in character. You haven't got it.
It was researched for a role.
Yeah.
Ian, thank you so much.
Helen. It was lovely to chat with you. Thanks very much. And best luck. I'm really looking forward to seeing what's coming out next as well. And best wishes to all the Behans and the Halls. Thanks.
And same to your family, love. Thanks a million. Great talking to you. Thanks, Ian.
Thanks, Helen.